3 days after my surgery, my fiancée took off her engagement ring, packed a small overnight bag, and walked out of our apartment with another man. She told me she just needed a night away. Fresh air. Space. I watched the door close and thought that was the moment my life finally collapsed. I was wrong. The moment that ended my pain came much later. Quietly. Without shouting. Without revenge. Without tears. But I didn't know that yet. At the time, all I knew was that I had survived a fall that should have killed me, and somehow that part felt easier than what was happening now. My name is Ethan. I'm 37. And the thing that almost broke me wasn't the fall. It was what happened after I survived it. A week earlier, I had fallen 15 feet onto concrete at a construction site outside town. One wrong step. 1 second of weightlessness. Then impact. The doctor said I was lucky. No spinal damage. No permanent loss of movement. Just fractures. Months of recovery. They didn't see my fiancée standing at the foot of the hospital bed, arms crossed, already somewhere else. Back then, I thought the worst thing that happened to me was the fall. I hadn't realized yet that the real damage didn't come from the ground. It came from what people do when they decide you're no longer useful. My fiancée Lauren and I had been together a little over 2 years. Engaged for 7 months. At least that's what the ring on her finger said. Lauren worked in digital marketing for a boutique fitness studio. Her world was soft lighting, curated posts, wellness captions, and talking about freedom like it was a personality trait. She hated the idea of being tied down to a schedule. I respected that. I really did. So I covered the rent, utilities, insurance, groceries, car payments, subscriptions. I even upgraded her phone earlier that year because she said she needed better content quality. I told myself that supporting her dreams was part of loving her. And when things were good, she made it feel worth it. Affectionate. Warm. Always saying she appreciated me. Looking back now, I can see the cracks. But back then, I thought we were solid. There was just one thing that never sat right. Her best friend, Ryan. Ryan ran a bike repair shop downtown. He had a key to our apartment. Used it freely. He'd let himself in without knocking, drop onto my chair, open my beer, and make comments that hovered right on the edge of disrespect. Jokes you couldn't call out without looking insecure. Once, while Lauren was in the kitchen, he looked straight at me and said, "Man, you're lucky she even puts up with you." He laughed. Lauren laughed too. I didn't. At the time, I told myself I was overthinking it. That trust meant not reacting. I would learn later how expensive that mistake was. During the surgery, they repaired my shoulder, warned me about nerve damage, and told me I'd be out of work for weeks. Possibly longer. When I woke up, Lauren was sitting beside the bed, holding my good hand. She smiled and said, "I'll take care of you." I believed her. What I didn't know was that within 72 hours, I would overhear something that completely changed how I saw her. Something I wasn't supposed to hear. But I'll get to that. The first 2 days after I got home felt manageable. Lauren helped me settle onto the couch. Adjusted the sling. Brought me water when my throat went dry from the pain meds. She even made soup once. Nothing elaborate. Just enough to make it seem like she meant what she'd promised in the hospital. But by the 3rd day, something shifted. She was always on her phone. Thumb moving nonstop. Notifications lighting up the screen one after another. Food deliveries started showing up, but never enough for both of us. 2 meals. 2 drinks. When I asked who she was expecting, she didn't look up and said, "I'm allowed to have friends, Ethan?" The way she said it made me feel like I'd accused her of something. I hadn't. I was just confused. I was barely able to sit upright without pain shooting through my shoulder, and suddenly I felt like an inconvenience in my own living room. That afternoon, I drifted in and out of sleep on the couch. The medication blurred time, made everything feel distant. That's when I heard her voice from the bedroom. She was leaving a voice message. Quiet but not quiet enough. "I swear he's turning into useless to me," she said. "I didn't sign up to be a nurse." Dead weight. The words landed heavy. Not sharp. Not loud. Just final. Not her fiancé who had just been seriously injured. Not the guy who paid for her life for 2 years. Just dead weight. I didn't react. I couldn't. Part of me hoped I'd imagined it. That the meds were messing with my head. But another part of me knew better. That moment lodged itself somewhere deep and stayed there. That evening, the front door opened without a knock. Ryan. He walked in carrying a couple of bottles and a paper bag, already talking like he owned the place. "You ready to forget your problems tonight?" he said to Lauren. He didn't look at me. Didn't lower his voice. I was lying there with my arm immobilized, barely able to lift a glass of water. And apparently I was the problem. Lauren laughed. Pulled 2 glasses from the cabinet. They sat 6 feet away from me, drinking, talking, joking like I wasn't even there. Like I was furniture. Every now and then Lauren would glance over. Not with concern. More like she was checking if I was still conscious. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. Ryan started talking about a show coming up. Some indie band playing at a venue downtown. Lauren lit up. She talked about how badly she needed to get out. How trapped she felt. How she couldn't breathe being stuck inside. Trapped. I'd been home from surgery for less than a week. Pain spiked every time I shifted, but I stayed still, listening, letting it sink in. That night, after Ryan finally left, Lauren came over and asked if I needed anything. I looked at her and said no. She shrugged, went to bed, and didn't say goodnight. I stayed on the couch staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in slow motion. The fall, the surgery, the message, Ryan's voice. And that's when the realization hit me. I wasn't her partner. I was her safety net. And the second I couldn't perform that role anymore, I stopped matching. I didn't know how far it would go yet, but I knew something was breaking. And 3 days later, she would make a choice that made it impossible to pretend otherwise. I would understand what that choice meant much later. But the moment it happened, something inside me went completely quiet. 3 days later, my sister Claire showed up without warning. She didn't call, didn't text. She just knocked once and let herself in. Claire is 39, corporate attorney. The kind of person who doesn't raise her voice because she doesn't need to. She took one look at me on the couch, one look at Lauren scrolling on her phone in the kitchen, and one look at Ryan stretched out in my chair like it belonged to him. Her expression went completely neutral. That's how you knew something was about to change. She walked over to Ryan and told him to get up. Not asked, told. Ryan laughed, tried to play it off, said he was just hanging out. Claire didn't move, didn't blink. She just stood there until he stood too, muttering something about having places to be. The second he left, Lauren's personality shifted. Suddenly she was attentive, concerned, asking if I needed anything, offering to make coffee, smiling at Claire like they were close. Claire smiled back, but her eyes stayed cold. For the next few days, Lauren played the role perfectly. She brought me water, adjusted my pillows, sat next to me during meals. But the second Claire left the room, the mask slipped. Her attention snapped back to her phone. Her replies turned short. Her patience vanished. I started noticing patterns. Whenever I was medicated or supposed to be asleep, she'd disappear into the bedroom. Her voice would drop. The door would close. Once, I caught a glimpse of her screen as she passed by. Ryan's name. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I just stored it away. Because by then, I knew this wasn't about neglect anymore. Something else was happening. On the fourth afternoon after Claire arrived, I asked Lauren if she could pick up my pain medication. The pharmacy was a 10-minute drive and I couldn't drive yet. She stared at me like I'd asked for something outrageous. I'm getting ready, she snapped. Why can't you do it yourself? Getting ready for what? Before I could ask, Claire stepped into the living room. What are you getting ready for? She asked calmly. Lauren bristled immediately. Said it wasn't her business. Said she was allowed to have a life. That's when the front door opened. Ryan walked in. But this time he wasn't dressed like he was stopping by. Button-down shirt. Clean boots. Cologne strong enough to carry across the room. Claire looked at him. Then at Lauren. I watched the realization form on her face. Lauren grabbed her bag and said they were heading out. There was a show downtown. They didn't want to drive back late. They were getting a hotel. The room went silent. Claire turned to her slowly. So you're leaving him alone, she said, while he's recovering from surgery, to get a hotel with another man. Lauren flushed. Then came the deflection. Claire was overstepping. I was insecure. She deserved to have fun after taking care of me. That last part almost made me laugh. I'd been watching the whole time. Then I noticed something on the table beside the couch. Her engagement ring. She'd taken it off and left it there like it meant nothing. I pointed at it. She shrugged and said it didn't match her outfit. That was it. No shouting. No explosion. Just a quiet snap inside my chest. Like a cable finally giving out under too much strain. I looked at her. At Ryan. At the door. And I said the only thing I had left. Have fun. My voice didn't shake. That seemed to scare her more than anger would have. She hesitated, waiting for me to beg or argue. I turned away. They left laughing. And that sound followed them down the hallway. That laugh was the moment everything became irreversible. Because the second the door closed, Claire pulled out her phone. And said, "We're ending this tonight." The moment the door closed behind them, the apartment felt different. Quieter. Lighter. Claire didn't raise her voice. Didn't pace. She just pulled out her phone and made one call. Mark. He was one of my closest friends. The kind who didn't ask questions before showing up. When he answered, Claire didn't say hello. She said, "Get over here. We're doing this now." Mark arrived 20 minutes later. Took one look at me still on the couch, arms strapped to my chest, and nodded like he already knew. "She crossed the line," he said. I nodded back. What happened next didn't feel dramatic. It felt precise. Claire opened her laptop and started listing things out. Not emotionally. Logistically. First, money. Accounts were separated. Access removed. Cards she used stopped working. No speeches. No anger. Just clean lines being drawn where none had existed before. Second, the apartment. Mark called a locksmith. Paid extra to get someone out that night. By 10 o'clock, the locks were changed. Third, the wedding. Claire made the calls. Venue. Catering. Photographer. Most of the deposits were under my name. Cancellations went through. Partial refunds came back. Each call ended the same way, polite, final, irreversible. While they handled everything, I stayed where I was. Not shaking. Not crying. Just watching the life I thought I had dissolve into details I'd ignored for years. Boxes came next. Not rushed. Not gentle. Clothes. Yoga mats. Trinkets. Crystals. All the things she'd spread through the apartment like it belonged to her. Mark grabbed a marker and wrote on one of the boxes. Ryan can help with this. It was the first time I laughed since the fall. Near midnight, Claire asked if I wanted to pause. Sleep on it. I pointed at the engagement ring still sitting on the table. Untouched. She picked it up, slipped it into an envelope and wrote a short note. You forgot this. At 1 a.m, my phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. A heart emoji. Saying they might stay out longer. Telling me not to wait up. Claire smiled when she read it. That's good, she said. That helps. We sat there surrounded by boxes stacked neatly by the door. I didn't feel angry. I felt finished. Sunday morning came fast. My phone exploded with messages. Why isn't my key working? My card got declined. What is going on? I didn't answer. Around noon, the building called asking if I was expecting someone. I said no. She tried buzzing anyway. Over and over. Then I heard her in the hallway. Crying. Yelling. Calling my name. Mark looked through the peephole and shook his head. She's on the phone, he said. Probably calling backup. He was right. About 20 minutes later, Ryan showed up. His voice sounded different now. Tense. Annoyed. She asked if she could stay with him. There was a pause. A long one. Then he said something about his roommate. About work. And just like that, he left. His footsteps faded down the hallway. She stayed behind. Why herself? I sat on the couch and listened. And for the first time since the accident, I felt something close to peace. The next few days were loud. Not in my apartment. Out there. Messages started coming in from mutual friends. Careful questions. Awkward check-ins. Apparently, Lauren had her own version of what happened. She said I'd snapped. Said I'd locked her out without warning. Said she didn't feel comfortable. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't defend myself. I just stayed quiet and let the noise burn itself out. Her closest friend, the same one she'd left that voice message for, stopped responding to her entirely. That told me everything. Vendors began reaching out, confirming cancellations. Lauren tried calling them back, asking if things could be reversed. They couldn't. The person who paid had ended it. She posted something vague online about betrayal and discovering people's true colors. I didn't react. I focused on healing. My shoulder wasn't recovering as fast as I wanted, but movement was coming back. My supervisor called and offered light-duty work. Dispatch. Phones. Scheduling crews. Nothing physical. I took it. Going back, even for a few hours, gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks. Purpose. Being around the guys helped. No pity. No awkward silence. Just normal. I started looking at houses. Nothing big. Something quiet. Something that felt like mine. By early fall, I found a small place outside the city. 2 bedrooms. Garage. A little yard. I put in an offer. It was accepted. Packing up the apartment felt like shedding dead skin. Every box took something with it. Claire helped. Mark helped. By the time winter settled in, I was in my own place. New locks. New routines. I slept better. Ate better. Physical therapy stopped feeling like a chore. About 3 months later, I was in the garage working on an old mower engine when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I knew who it was before I saw her. Lauren stepped out of a beat-up sedan I didn't recognize. She looked smaller. Tired. Not the woman who'd walked out laughing that night. She asked if we could talk. I stayed on the porch. She apologized. Said she'd made a mistake. Said she didn't realize what she'd lost until it was gone. Then she told me something I didn't expect. Something that should have shaken me. But didn't. And that was when I realized the pain was already over. I just hadn't noticed when it ended. Lauren stood there shifting her weight, hands locked together like she was bracing for impact. Then she said it. She was pregnant. For a second, I waited for something to happen inside me. Anger. Jealousy. Anything. Nothing came. Before I could even respond, she added that it wasn't mine. It was Ryan's. The words just landed. Flat. She kept talking, filling the silence. Said he'd disappeared. Stopped answering calls. Stopped replying to messages. Her parents were furious. She was working 2 jobs. Barely keeping it together. Then she looked at me the way she used to, like I was something solid she could lean on. You're a good man, she said. You could still be the father. We could still be a family. That's when I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unreal. Mark pulled into the driveway right then, carrying supplies I'd asked him to grab earlier. He got out, saw Lauren and shook his head. Wow, he said. She really committed to every bad decision. I laughed again. And then it stopped. I told Lauren she didn't ruin her life. She just chose it. I told her I didn't abandon her. I simply stopped holding up a fantasy she'd already walked away from. She said I was cold. Said she never thought I'd be this indifferent. But I didn't feel cold. I felt clear. I told her to call the man she chose when I couldn't lift my own arm. That if he was ready to share hotel rooms, he could share consequences too. She stood there for a moment longer, waiting for me to soften. I didn't. I went back into the garage and picked up the engine part I'd been working on. I heard her car start, then fade down the road. And that was it. 6 months earlier, I thought losing her would destroy me. Standing there in my own garage, in my own house, with people who showed up when it mattered, I understood the truth. I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. She chose another life. And in doing so, she released me from mine. That was the moment. Not the night she left. Not the locks. Not the silence afterward. But the second I felt nothing at all. That's where my pain ended. Every life finds its ex. If this story stayed with you, I'd like to know why. You can share your thoughts in the comments. This is Elfix Tales, where pain is allowed to end. And if these stories resonate with you, you're welcome to stay.